This is Dennis McMahon, and welcome to Positively Vermont. And today we have a very special guest, Gwen Pokalo Hart of the Vermont Women's Business Center, which is part of the Center for Women and Enterprise. And we're going to learn all about how women can get involved in business and how their businesses can be helped. Welcome, Gwen.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for having me. This is really exciting.
And first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. And, I want to pick up on something that you started with in your introduction, which is that I'm a very special guest. All of the guests on Positively Vermont have been very, very special. And it's great to be talking with you. As we had talked offline, I think that this is going to be the perfect conversation that kind of brings together at the end of your year here, December, all of the different organizations and people that you talked with over the year. Many of the clients of the Center for Women in Enterprise weave throughout those organizations and contribute or benefit from programs. But we'll get to that, I know. Okay, so about myself, I'm Gwen. I came to Vermont in the early 2000s to go to the University of Vermont. And the University of Vermont took wonderful care of me and allowed me to explore all these different parts of myself and parts of Vermont, which led me to falling in desperate love with Vermont. So I'm someone who doesn't, who has a lot of interests and needs to explore them all. I have had kind of a checkered past, as many of our clients at the Women's Business Center do. I worked in rural development research, and that was really where I started to fall in love with the personality of Vermont and Vermont's communities. Um, and as a result of that work, I was able to travel around the state. And then I started with a couple of colleagues, a locally owned product store at the start of the local VOR movement. And so that was a lot of fun. And I got to meet a lot of emerging entrepreneurs and food producers who now are in thriving businesses. And that was, I don't know, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So I started my own business after I got out of grad school because I worked my way out of a job and graduated into a economic disaster, in short. And so I started my own business, and that kind of got out of hand in a wonderful way. And then little by slow, I ended up here at the Center for Women in Enterprise. I started working in women specific economic empowerment programming. I started at Mercy Connections, which is a local nonprofit doing awesome work in the inclusive economy. And then when the Women's Business Center grant of that is federally funded, I'm sure we'll talk about that, came up for option. The Center for Women in Enterprise applied and was awarded it, and I came in to open the first women's business center under the Center for Women in Enterprise. So I've been here for 8 years, and in that time, I bought a house in Winooski and have a kid. I have a 2-year-old. I have a wonderful partner who's a teacher at Montpelier High School. So it's all good stuff.
That's great. Well, tell us about the Vermont Women's Business Center. Give us a little history of that. And also, I noticed the parent organization, apparently the Center for Women in Enterprise, and we're going to be putting the website information on it. So tell us about what that is and how it came about, or what they are actually.
Totally. So the Women's Business Centers are a federal program, federally funded program through the Small Business Administration that it provides what's called technical assistance for businesses. Technical assistance is defined in many different ways, but here at the Center for Women in Enterprise, how we approach technical assistance is we do no-cost business counseling throughout the life of the business with entrepreneurs and with counselors who are entrepreneurs and business owners themselves and experts in a specific context. So we've got that individual business counseling and group learning experiences. We really see people thrive when they get with each other to hash out ideas, to collaboratively purchase, all those things. So the historical context of the WBCs are kind of interesting. If any of your guests are wondering, okay, well, why a women's business center? I might have heard of, for example, the Small Business Development Center or SCORE or the Veteran Business Outreach Center of New England. Why do we need a women's business center? I'd love to tackle that if that's an appropriate time for you, Dennis.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Describe
So
what we like to do is describe the need and describe, how your organization worked on the solution. It's maybe also fill us in on the scope of women in business in Vermont, and we'll get to it later about some of the obstacles that women and sometimes entrepreneurs in general face. But go with what you just were starting to answer about.
excellent. Okay, so the historical context of the women's business centers, I think, are kind of interesting and answer that why women's business centers. They were started as a pilot program in the late 80s, early 90s. Congress saw that women were, okay, let's think about what was happening in the 80s. There were massive sexual harassment and sexual assault suits becoming very, very public, especially within the, public institutions. The financial costs of having barriers to women accessing economic opportunities, for example, having a male co-signer on a bank account. Can you believe that in as as late as 1988, women had to have a male co-signer for a loan or to get a bank account? I mean, this is a no-brainer for us now, but it was revolutionary to think of the financial power and prowess of women. And so the Congress said, okay, let's set aside a little bit of funding. What would happen if women started businesses at the same rate as men? Because what we also saw in the 80s was an explosion of entrepreneurship, right? This is when we're seeing Wall Street and, my husband's right now watching the reboot of Wall Street, the Michael Douglas movie, right? So like we're seeing like what the economy can look like, and yet women weren't participating. And when fully half of our population isn't engaged to their fullest or is facing economic challenges to, participating fully in the economy, our economy suffers. Like that's just a baseline. So, so Congress goes, okay, let's set aside a small pool of funds. Let's do some research about women in the economy, women's role in the economy, and let's also get them some help to start businesses. And so from that time, the Women's Business Center program proliferated. We now have the 160 women's business centers across the country, including in every territory of the United States. And they have an amazing support organization called the Association of Women's Business Centers. And what this powerful network does is it does the no-cost business counseling and tons of different types of group learning experiences, but we approach it with a different set of eyes on the unique barriers and challenges that women, non-binary folk encounter. And I should just say, okay, you're a women's business center. I get paid to think and talk about women's specific economic issues. These are issues that you hinted at in the introducing this question that certainly overlap with other populations and identities. And so we at the Women's Business Center, you can kind of think of us as, okay, we know that care and access to care and access to financial capital that is based in values of the business owner are challenges. And so we develop our programs and our networks to really reflect that. Then, so the Association of Women's Business Centers kind of supports the women's business centers, but the way that Congress structured this program was it has to be housed, the Women's Business Center for a state has to be housed within an institution of higher education or a nonprofit. And so the Vermont Women's Business Center is housed by the regional nonprofit, the Center for Women in Enterprise. So we have kind of two sides of the house being under the Center for Women in Enterprise. We do that technical assistance that we talked about. That's what most people in Vermont are going to encounter when they're working with us, is the technical assistance. We also do some procurement assistance programming, which helps people to get certified as a women-owned business and take on corporate and government contracts. This can be a really lucrative next step in certain industries, and certainly if you're looking to take on government contracts. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. And so having the house, you can think of the Center for Women in Enterprise as our house, and then the Vermont Women's Business Center is one room in that house. The Center for Women in Enterprise also houses the women's business centers across New England. And so there's a really powerful network then that we get to benefit from working with our sister organizations very, very closely, especially in the Boston area.
That's great. Now, what about this might be anecdotal, but you always see these reports of women unable to get credit, small businesses unable to get credit, all kinds of, and if you're going to get grants, all kinds of requirements. So let's talk about money and credit and what you can do or what you do for that type of situation.
Thank you, Dennis. That is our biggest thing that we think about all of the time. It's kind of it feels like a complex question. So I'd like to approach it in a couple of different ways. One is thinking about the historical context of women and the people who are coming to us to get credit, either a loan or equity, right? There's two types of capital essentially, and there's different products that you might get in that form a spectrum, but really you either pay it back in a fixed amount, that's called debt, or you pay it back in terms of ownership of your company or ownership of your assets, that's called equity. And when we think about the history of women in capital, the statistics are kind of dismal. It's, but if we dig into, so women have not had the same credit building experiences available to our male colleagues for as long of a time, right? And when we don't see ourselves reflected in institutions and in leadership, we don't think of ourselves in those roles. And so that's where, leadership development is a really important part of this conversation. And so the historical context of women in business has been that they often are and continue to be, even in 2024, when we're recording this, women tend to be the caregivers for the family, either elder care, child care, family care, whatever the case may be. And so that then impacts their ability to participate fully in the workforce. So it's a workforce issue, as well as entrepreneurship is like a subset of that, right? So when our workforce fails individuals, they often start businesses. I don't know if you knew this, Dennis. I didn't know this until we had a couple, but in times of economic crisis and disasters, entrepreneurship thrives. So we see that, right? So we see women approaching, they're the fastest. This is somewhat of a meaningless statistic, but Women are the fastest growing segment of the economy.
Yeah.
And right. And so because there's this movement to participate fully. So there's the historical context. Then when we talk about the specific issues around accessing capital, I'd like to take it in two ways. One, let's talk about that debt capital first. Debt weighs much more heavily on women because of there's like this magic equation of like longevity, like the longevity of the woman and her experience in the workforce and being able to build wealth over the course of time. Um, and so we know that debt weighs very heavily on women. We also know that uh, loans, there's been research that shows what the experience of women are when they're like looking into getting a business loan, men, and it was a white woman, a black woman, and a white man in this research. And what that research showed was that women were treated very, very differently than their male partners. In seeking a loan. They were told, don't worry about it. We'll get you the right product for you. You just, tell us what you want to do. Or we're given extra requirements to meet. So and that was a nationwide study. I don't believe that I don't know if any institutions in Vermont participated. But what that means here in Vermont is that debt is very scary. And we know that the number one concern for women in general, when they're surveyed, is personal financial stability. For men, incidentally, if you're wondering, it's personal like reputation in the community, personal connection in the community. So, so we've got that, those experiences. And then women are often starting businesses. When we get to the business part of things, women are often starting businesses in industries that are not attractive to are either startups have a very difficult time finding capital because they're riskier. And women tend to start businesses here in Vermont, at least, in the Main Street economy. And the Main Street economy doesn't lend itself to the explosive growth that is favored by traditional venture capital, that equity investors. And so when we kind of hodgepodge all that together, it means that capital can be a major barrier to a woman taking the next step in their business. I think we'll end up talking a little bit about some of the other things that stand in the way of women.
We have a very tight time schedule here,
Oh,
so let me just jump to a few things. So you provide technical assistance, you maybe provide networking assistance, and what institutions do you work with that can aid your clients?
great question. So really, all of I kind of painted a negative picture here of women's business. It's actually thriving here in Vermont. I'm sorry I spent so much time on kind of the context here. Okay, so most of the people that you interviewed over the course of this year have been people that either our clients contribute to or benefit from their programs. I know you had Secretary Tebbets from the Agency of Agriculture last month. Many of our clients receive working lands grants, enterprise grants from the agency, and we work with a lot of our awesome partners in the network: the Small Business Administration, the Small Business Development Center, SCORE, the Veteran Business Outreach Center of New England. And all of this work is really personalities based. There's the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund that provides some fantastic resourcing. I mean, if I could spend the whole show just naming people. We here at the Center for Women in Enterprise, we deal mostly with Main Street businesses. And that's not to say that women aren't starting tech businesses. We find that they are best served by our friends over at the Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies when they are looking at commercial tech commercialization.
Okay. One of the things we like to do here on Positively Vermont is ask what you need from the public, what you need from the legislature, what you need from institutions. So tell us briefly what you need.
Oh, good question. Okay, so what I observe women business owners in particular needing is direct to the business owner technical assistance funding. So there was the Small Business Technical Exchange, Technical Assistance Exchange a couple of years ago, which provided $5,000 kind of stipends to women-owned businesses to contract with whomever they needed to do the work that they needed to get done. That's a immense opportunity there. From the legislature, you know what I think we need? We need a procurement policy for Vermont that reflects our values. If we value having an inclusive economy, then let's make sure that our procurement policies reflect that. And then we here at the Center for Women in Enterprise, we're a nonprofit. And so we thrive based on the charitable contributions of individuals and organizations. And we have to make our match. That federal grant that we receive is a matching grant, which means that we have to match dollar for dollar everything that we get from the feds, which is generous and quite an engagement. So we're always looking also for volunteers. Especially if you have financial background and acumen, we want to talk to you. Those are some of the things that are on my mind.
Do you have any upcoming events during the next few months? Any special things like that? Tell us.
Totally. So we have a very rich calendar of programming, but some things that I'd love to pull out is we are going to be offering our 13-week strategic growth incubator program called Power Forward. That's going to start in March in partnership with the Vermont Specialty Foods Association and the Center for an Agricultural Economy. That's a fantastic opportunity if you are examining growth in your business. This is like you want to be in this group. And another thing is we are celebrating 30 years of being here on Earth at the Center for Women in Enterprise region. And so there are a ton of different ways to participate. We have this really fun live auction. I know that's like that sounds like an anomaly, but it is a lot of fun. And it's online, you can stream it. So there are a lot of events that'll come up then.
Okay. We're running out of time, but what I need to ask right now is how can people get involved? Do you have a physical location? Tell us about your websites. Tell us about your phone numbers, and how can people get involved?
Totally. So the Center for Women in Enterprise website is cweonline.org. And you can click on offices and click on the Vermont office. People can get in touch with us directly at info.vermont@cweonline.org. That's the best email address for us. There are two of us in the Vermont office, Elle and myself. And so it is womaned regularly. People can also get in touch and involved by signing up for our newsletter and finding out about all the things that are coming up that way.
And do you have a physical office?
Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we have a physical office. We work statewide. We have a physical office on Pine Street in Burlington, and then we work out of like co-working facilities and client offices around the state. And people might also like to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram, especially, we put a lot of grant opportunities, just different types of opportunities that we see. We throw them up on Instagram.
I love your enthusiasm, and my best guest is an enthusiastic guest. And I just like to end with uh, how do you feel things will go in the next ensuing years for Vermont women in business? What's the picture going
Mm.
to be like?
I think it's going to be phenomenally collaborative and innovative collaborations, stuff that like we can't even describe right now. Collective purchasing, collective distribution. I really think that I see that on a regular basis with our clients already. When they get in the room together, they are collaborating. So I anticipate that just kind of mushrooms across the state. I also think that women are increasingly occupying the agricultural space. And so I think that we are going to be appreciating those women-owned agricultural businesses in new ways as they encounter very real climate challenges and are encountering them with great chutzpah and innovation.
That's great. Okay, I want to thank Gwen Pokalo Hart, the director of the Vermont Women's Business Center, for joining me here on Positively Vermont. Thank you, Gwen, and good luck with all these various activities. And people can go to the website, and we will publish that along with the video. And thank you for attending, and thanks everyone for watching. This is Dennis McMahon.